let's jump into this. I'm excited about this topic, why revenue operations is the missing link in your growth plan. I'm Frank Cowell. I'm a CEO of a company called Digitopia. I'm also author of a couple of books. Most recent book, it's called Building Your Digital Utopia. And I'm a speaker. I speak nationally on topics related to business, strategy, positioning, marketing, sales, and what have you. If you'd like to connect with me after today's presentation, I'd welcome you guys to connect on the socials. I'm at Frank Cowell on most channels, and otherwise email. That's usually the best way to get in touch with me. I'm frank at digitopia.agency. So if there are questions that we're not able to get answered today, or if I go a little long, you're just not able to stick around and you want to ask some questions, please shoot me that email, frank at digitopia.agency. First of all, I want to recognize every single one of you from taking time out of your busy days. We live in a pretty chaotic, hectic world today. And so for you to take time out to work on your business, work on improving what you're doing from a revenue standpoint, just huge shout out to you guys for taking that time to sharpen your skills and sharpen that axe, so to speak. So here's the agenda for today. I want to cover three big things. One, I want to answer this question. What is revenue operations, or RevOps for short? You've probably heard that phrase RevOps pretty frequently, actually. So what is revenue operations? How RevOps can help you create internal alignment. And the third thing is, I want to quickly just go over three ways you can lead the charge at your organization so you can create a culture of revenue. And ultimately, I want to help you crush the competition. So let's jump into that today. You might be wondering if RevOps is something that's applicable to you, if it's something that can help you. I'm going to run a few of these common phrases by you and maybe ask you, have you said any of these things lately? Have you said anything remotely close? Things like, our process isn't working. Why can't we generate revenue more consistently? Our MQLs are crap. I wish I knew what I could do to unlock growth in the business. The team seems just disjointed and no one's working together. I wish there were more actionable insights from our reports. Our data and tools are a mess. And maybe you just feel like there has to be a more efficient way to do this. So if you've said any of these things lately, if you have had any of these feelings and maybe you just haven't voiced it, you're in the right place. Today, we're going to talk about the applicability of RevOps to these situations and how RevOps can help you eliminate these feelings and these kinds of sentiments within your organization. So let's answer that question. What is revenue operations, AKA RevOps? Here's a definition of RevOps, right? It's a business function that aims to maximize an organization's revenue potential by driving full funnel accountability through the alignment of marketing, sales, and service across process, platform, and people. So we have a mouthful there, and today we're going to unpack that. Now, I will give you fair warning. When I've given presentations on these topics, the related topics in the past, I've had presentations on process, I've had presentations on platform, and I've had presentations on people. And each one is its own presentation. So today I'm trying to cram three of those together to help give you an understanding of a holistic view. And so bear with me today. I'm probably going to go fast. I'm going to try to save time for questions at the end. But again, remember to shoot me an email if I just don't get to your questions or you just can't stick around until the end. Here's a quote from a recent Forbes article to kind of justify the definition I just gave you. If you don't want to believe me and you think, hey, this is just one person's opinion, here's a quote from a recent Forbes article that RevOps recognizes that revenue isn't just an outcome, just some happenstance byproduct, right? But rather a full process that involves the strategic convergence of sales, marketing, and customer success, or what I just referred to as service. It's the end-to-end process of driving revenue from the moment a prospect considers a purchase, marketing, to when you close the deal, sales, to their renewal and upsell, customer success, service. The result of this orchestration is faster growth and more profit. So this is something that is becoming a broader conversation in the business world. And we're starting to see more and more job titles with the word revenue in them. Chief Revenue Officer, Revenue Operations Director, and so on. We're starting to see that. So this is definitely something that is very serious and it's starting to take hold. The critical idea out of all of this is really alignment, and that's what's going to be a big theme of what we're going to talk about today, is we're trying to create alignment between marketing, sales, and service. Now, we're going to talk today about how we're going to go about doing that. But let's talk a little bit about what's driving the need. One of the biggest things that's driving the need for this alignment is that the marketing and sales tech that's out there today is just growing out of control. And the promise of this technology to make your life easier is now all convoluted and is now piling on top of each other. And it's actually not making your life easier. It's actually creating confusion and chaos. And it's actually creating needs to add on these tech projects to try to solve problems that all of this tech is now creating. And so it's out of control. And so this desire for clarity and insights is a real thing. And tech is driving a lot of this. In fact, what's interesting is Gartner now reports that tech accounts for a whopping 29% of the marketing 29% of the marketing expense budget, which makes it the single largest area of investment for marketing resources. Yet, only 12% of marketers are seeing significant value from their technologies. And this is according to Marketing Technology Industry Council. And so we have this dichotomy going on. The tech is there to make our lives easier. The tech is there to enable us, yet it is the very thing that is causing chaos. And so as a result, very few people are seeing the value. Here's just an example from 2018. Mind you, this is 2 years old, and so you know it's only gotten worse, but here's what the marketing tech landscape looked like just 2 years ago. And again, it's only gotten worse. And so all of these things not only start to create chaos within the organization from a data and clarity standpoint, but just imagine your mind share having to deal with all of this, right? There seems to be a new convenient little app every other day. Oh, by the way, the number of channels that you're supposed to participate on is also growing by the day. And so ultimately, that's driving additional confusion. And by the way, this is just in the US alone. I mean, I don't have worldwide statistics on this, but as an example, over 400,000 businesses are started in the US each year. And I'm sure for those of you who are joining throughout the world, I'm sure it's similar in your countries. It's never been easier to start a business. So this, again, just adds to the chaos. And the net result is we have a crowded, noisy world. Too many technologies to manage too many channels with just way too many competitors. And so chaos reigns supreme. And so this is what's driving the need for someone to come in and get a handle on all this and drive revenue and be the person that operationalizes the revenue programs. And again, organizations just lacking direction and clarity. And so there's a desperate need for this today. And so the process of RevOps, I think, can go a long way towards providing that direction and clarity. Now, what you've heard out there, if you've done any research on this, is there are a lot of opinions on what RevOps is, and we just covered that. But there is very, very little information on how you go about implementing RevOps. There's a little bit of advice, but there is not a lot of practical hands-on. So that's what I want to give you today. And ultimately, like Ryan Gosling here, I want to work with you to fix this. That's ultimately what we want to do, is let's fix it and look at how we can take a deeper dive on RevOps and how it can help you create that internal alignment that you're after. So first, let's strategically align at the highest level on the process, platform, people that we talked about a moment ago. If RevOps is your entire ecosystem, if you will, the first thing that's your priority is process. And the reason that's important because it then helps you define platform, which then helps you to define people. Because what you're essentially answering are these questions. How are we going to drive revenue? That's your process. I apologize, my lines are pointed at the wrong thing here. How are we going to drive revenue? That's what you're asking with process. With platform, you're asking the question, what tech do we need to enable the process? And then finally, with people, you're answering this question, who do we need on the team to execute the process and platform, right? And that's the order that you want to define this in. Process defines platform, which then defines people, because the people that you have need to be able to competently execute the process, and they need to be able to operate those platforms and operate the tech within those platforms and understand it and be able to wield it. So let's jump into process. When we talk about aligning process for marketing, sales, and service, there's 5 big things that you're going to want to align on: goals, objectives, buyer personas, business math, and experiences. And we're going to dive into these here in a moment. Goals and objectives are pretty self-explanatory, right? You know, where are we trying to go as a company? What are the marketplace opportunities? What are our objectives for 3 years? What are our objectives this year? What are our objectives this quarter? And so those are pretty self-explanatory. And so you and your team need to get together and, of course, align on those. I'm not going to go into goals and objectives because they kind of explain themselves. But these are kind of the questions that you're going to be asking. And there are many other questions and many other things you can define when it comes to goals and objectives. Pretty straightforward, right? Where are we going? What are our targets? What are the KPIs? What are the supporting metrics? And what are our best market and product opportunities, right? Because ultimately what we want to do is we want to be able to prioritize. And where we're going to use this prioritization is when we start to define the personas that we are going to engage within our RevOps program. You know, it's been said that trying to attract and appeal to everybody is just as effective as trying to attract and appeal to nobody. And so one of the critical philosophies that I teach when it comes to RevOps is hyper-specificity, which means the efforts must be focused on one buyer persona and one pain point combination at a time. And I'm not suggesting that you only ever focus on one, but one at a time, because as you'll see as we go through this, you have to be able to create an effective experience and create momentum with this buyer persona before you can move on to others. So one at a time, that's a key philosophy. What do I mean by that? So what you want to do is, as you start to prioritize who your buyer personas are across the different markets you want to get into and the areas in which you want to grow, you want to define all of your different buyer personas and you want to prioritize them. And when you prioritize them, then you want to start diving into identifying who they are. And you want to define who they are at a very deep emotional level. And you want to really understand these people. You want to understand, who their influencers are, what they struggle with, what their challenges are, what their questions are that they have. And when you do that, what you're trying to do is you're trying to understand the questions and the concerns and the challenges they have across the buyer's journey. We've all seen something similar to this, I'm sure. The buyer's journey typically is identified as awareness, consideration, and decision. So across each of those stages, what are their questions? What are their concerns? Where do they have misconceptions? Where are they being misinformed by the marketplace? And you're going to start to take an inventory of all of these things. I like to think of these 3 areas as problems, paths, and providers. So in the awareness stage, they're becoming problem aware. In the consideration stage, they're becoming path aware. In other words, they're becoming aware of the various paths they can go down to solve their problem. And then finally in decision, they're trying to now choose a provider that can take them down their chosen path. And so your question you're trying to answer is, what are the issues across all of these stages, across these 3 stages? Then you want to write them down and you want to bucket them in each of these stages. And so you'll end up with an inventory. And so to get to your focus pain point, you want to ask this question once you have that inventory: which issue do they want to solve more than anything else? I mean, it's really critical if you want to have an effective RevOps program that it's very focused and it's very specific and it aims to bring specific value to specific audiences. And you're going to do that by hyper-focusing in on buyer personas and their pain points. So ask that question: which of those issues do they want to solve more than anything else? And how can your brand be there to drive value for that pain point? And so going back to our buyer persona example, you identify that on your buyer persona documentation. By the way, buyer personas should be something that you're doing within your organization, and they should be documents that you don't just throw in the drawer after you've developed them. You should revisit them regularly. and you want to keep them up to date and make them a living, breathing document. But here we have the focus pain point, and this then drives what we're going to focus on for this particular persona. Additionally, what you want to do is you want to then develop business math. Now, this is something I find that people almost never do when it comes to defining buyer personas. They almost never do the business math to understand the cost of acquisition that's acceptable for this particular persona. So if you were to bring this person into your organization successfully and acquire this customer, this client, you need to understand how much you're willing to spend to acquire that person. Cost of customer acquisition, the COCA, or what's often called CAC, customer acquisition cost. However you refer to it, you have to know that, and you have to identify that with the buyer persona. The reason this is critical is because as your teams work to attract more of these people to drive revenue, as your teams work to engage your existing clients to refer you more of these people, as you work to drive more value with your existing clients, this then helps you understand if you're doing that profitably, right? And as you drive more value with existing clients, by the way, that's going to increase how much you can spend with your cost of customer acquisition. So you're going to want to keep this up to date. But it's really critical to understand this. This is what we call business math. And so what we have now is we've identified a persona. We're going to get really specific with our persona. We're going to get really specific with the pain point that our organization, that you uniquely solve, that you do that in a way that is better than anyone else in the marketplace. And then pair with that the business math so that we have that as a foundation before we then start to develop an experience to cater to this individual. So let's talk about the kinds of experiences that you're going to create for this individual. And this experience, by the way, is how you start to drive revenue throughout the entire journey that that person goes on, whether they're a suspect, whether they're a prospect or an opportunity, whether they're an existing client and you're trying to drive more revenue and value from them. You need to create a relationship-driven experience that's built around that one person and that one pain point. So let's jump into that. What I'm going to show you is more generically described as a funnel. I view it as bottom up instead of a top down as most funnels are. And the reason I view it as bottom up is to drive home the point that we're trying to elevate relationships with this buyer persona. And so I view it as an ascension ladder. So starting at the very bottom, the very first thing you want to do is educate this person through your experience. And so you're going to have cornerstone content that showcases your brand's expertise coming from a place of education to help them solve that pain point. And essentially what you're saying is, here's how to solve your pain point or achieve your desire. And so your goal of the kind of content you put out at this level is to educate. You'll notice at the far left there in that box, there's the word in all caps. That is your goal for the content at that level. Once you do that and once you're engaging this particular person with this content, the way you progress the relationship is then the next thing you want to do is empower them. And you want to empower them with an asset that helps them take the next step. It literally helps them take action. It's not more content to read. It's not more information to consume. It's an asset that helps them take action. Some sort of template or tool or calculator or checklist or a worksheet or a cheat sheet or whatever. But it's something that basically continues the conversation. And so you can link those first two levels together. I often call this a 1-2 punch because they work together. So that way you can have a natural conversation. Here's how to solve your pain point, and here's a resource to help you do it. And so that empower piece is really critical. You want to empower them to take action. You want to have them empower them to take action based on what you taught them at the education level. Those two should always be very tightly linked. Again, I call that a 1-2 punch because they work well together. Oftentimes, when organizations have problems generating leads at this level, it's because they don't have it tightly connected to an educational piece of content. Once you do that, you're then able to move through that relationship-driven experience. And the next thing your job is to do is to inspire them. And you're going to inspire them with deep dive content where you're going to do one of two things. You're going to share stories of transformative proof, AKA case studies, But you want the story to be about your buyer. You want it to be about the customer, and you want it to be a story of transformation. You want it to be so compelling that your buyer persona is just inspired to take action and engage your brand directly because they essentially want the transformation you're sharing. The other thing you can do, or the other type of deep dive content, is what we call how it works content. It's content that shows that your buyer persona what it's like to engage with your offering, not from the point of a sales pitch, but from the point of the perspective of a day in the life. Here's what this experience is going to be like. Here's how you're going to achieve your transformation. And this can be done in video, can be done in webinars, case studies, what have you. But the key thing here is you're supposed to inspire them. You want them to be able to see themselves in this content, whether it's a case study, a proof piece of content, or whether it's a how it works deeper dive. You want them to start mentally buying here by seeing themselves in this story. And so you inspire them. So essentially what you're saying from a conversational point of view is, now see how someone like you achieved X using this approach, right? The approach that you just taught them in your cornerstone content and in your lead magnet. If you do that right, then the next relationship level in your experience is to engage them directly with some sort of foot in the door offer. And if you do the deep dive content right, if you inspire them enough, and if you do that right, and you obsess about creating amazing inspirational content, then your big sales pitch for the foot in the door offer merely needs to be, would you like that too? You don't need some sort of slick foot in the door and some, audit or, consultation that nobody's ever heard of. All you need to do is inspire them, and do so such that all you have to say is, would you like that too? And so that foot in the door is now where you aim to engage them directly, one-to-one, and start to help them understand their problem even further and show them how your approach can finally solve that for them. And when you've done that successfully, they become a client of yours, a customer of yours, and that's when they engage on your core offer. And your job with your core offer is to transform them, to give them the transformation they were ultimately after. Because remember, nobody buys what you have to offer because they actually want what you have to offer. They buy the transformation of your offer. We've all heard that saying that nobody buys a drill because they want a drill. They buy a drill because they want a hole in the wall. They want a hole somewhere. And so what I would ask you to think about is, what is the transformation that your buyers, your customers are after? And ask the question, is our core offer doing that? Is our core offer actually creating the transformation that our buyers are after? And so that's the job of your core offer. But you shouldn't stop there. What you should do is then aim to turn them into fans by elevating them. And so now is where you're going to do things that are above and beyond what they even expected from the transaction of your offering. And so this is where you're going to do things like have office hours and continuing education and exclusive events and access to certain venues and maybe industry data and reports. You're going to do things that now take their transformation to a place that they didn't realize. And so you aim to elevate them. This here is a relationship-driven experience, all built around that one person and that one pain point. And when you are successful at this, then you can move on to the next persona and pain point. So then you can have multiple experiences in your entire ecosystem. By the way, you can think of this relationship-driven experience broken out across marketing, sales, and service in this way, where marketing is really handling everything up to the inspire. Sales is handling the engage and a part of the transform as they onboard and are the liaison to clients. And then service handles the core offer and the delight, and they aim to transform and elevate. So you can kind of think of the breakout of your marketing, sales, and service teams this way. But what's critical is that they're aligned, that this journey needs to be congruent, because what you don't want to have happen is marketing to create an amazing experience, and then for sales to get a hold of this prospect and not continue the journey that this person has been on. So create a relationship-driven experience once you know your persona and the pain point that you want to hone in on. Let's talk about platform. Okay, so how do we have platform alignment of marketing, sales, and service? One, we need to make sure that we're at minimum tracking life cycles in our systems. We want to make sure we can properly have attribution for where contacts come from. We want to be able to see the engagement history of our contacts. We want to standardize data across marketing, sales, and service. And finally, we want to have analytics that aren't just like Google Analytics, right? Which is great for website traffic and maybe some website conversions. But we want to make sure we have analytics across the entire spectrum. So those are the 5 things that we want to aim to accomplish at minimum to create platform alignment across marketing, sales, and service. So when we say relationship lifecycle tracking, what do we mean? Well, this is the relationship-driven experience that I just showed you. And so each of these levels represents a relationship in your systems. What you want to make sure of is that as your contacts move from one system to another, that all of the other systems are updated. So for example, when somebody becomes a customer with your brand, you want to make sure that the marketing system knows about it and that it's automatically updated. You want to make sure that the sales system that you're using is updated and the sales system knows about it. Same as if someone moves into an opportunity in sales, you want to make sure your marketing system is aware. You want to make sure that the marketing team can actually see when someone's a customer, what additional products they've purchased, what additional, what support tickets exist, what kind of interactions they've had with the service team. That's really critical because if you're going to engage your marketing team to drive those existing customer relationships further for retention, for repeat buys, for increasing contracts, for getting referrals, your marketing team has to have the data of what's actually happening with the customer base. So that's really critical that you align life cycles across all your systems. So this is going to require that you invest in some tech to get those aligned, whether it's a one-time synchronization project that you prop up, or it's a service that you subscribe to that brings that tech together and keeps the life cycles up to date. But it's really critical. And it's the only way, and we're going to talk about this here in a moment, it's the only way you're going to actually be able to do have accountability across the entire funnel. We mentioned that a moment ago, full funnel accountability. If you don't have the life cycles synced up across all your systems, you won't be able to drive that full funnel accountability. Let's talk about marketing attribution. I'm going to talk about just minimum marketing attribution because if we have any marketers on the line here today, you'll know that attribution is a very big conversation and it can get complex really fast. I mean, there are a number of ways to drive attribution. Or to look at attribution. You could be doing first touch, you could do last touch, you can do linear, you can do degradation, you could do all sorts of different models. And so today I'm not here to talk about the complexities of those different models. I want to talk about just the minimum marketing attribution you need in your tech. Okay, and so that's going to help us understand near-term and long-term ROI. And so we have to answer these 2 questions. Which campaigns or efforts originated the contact, and which campaigns or efforts influenced the contact? And the reason this is important is because what you'll find often in any given effort, especially if you're talking about attracting new clients, is you'll find that oftentimes you'll have a campaign out there that will generate new contacts in your database, and then those new contacts will just sit there and do nothing for some time. They'll receive some of your nurturing emails and whatnot, and maybe your sales team calls them and follows up. But one day when they eventually become a client, the knee-jerk reaction or the automatic reaction is just to credit the originating campaign for bringing that customer into the fold. When in reality, if you were to look at the history of what went on with that contact, yes, the Google ad brought them in, but they opened 10 of your emails. They consumed 3 of your additional pieces of content. They liked a couple of social posts. You'll see that there are a lot of things that happen above and beyond the originating effort. So it's important to be able to know both of those because the additional efforts absolutely influence, and the influence activities are absolutely important. This idea that only the originating source or the originating effort matters is just a bunch of BS, right? Like that's not actually how it works. And we see time and time again when we look at contacts in a database that they sometimes sit there, and then there are all of these other things that come into play and touch this contact. So those things absolutely influence, and you have to understand that. So you have to be able to understand those two basic questions. Now, the degree to which a particular effort influenced, that gets a little more complex, and I don't think out the gate you have to attempt to answer that. But I think you do have to answer out the gate. We have to be able to know this customer, what originated them, and what were the things that influenced them. We have to be able to know that. You also want to be able to see contact engagement history. So how powerful would it be for your sales team to be able to look through a contact record and see not just emails they opened and clicked, but web pages they visited, forms they filled out, pages they visited, social posts that they liked and shared and whatnot. To be able to see all that allows your sales team to have relevant conversations with new prospects. But taking that even further, because we're all about full funnel when it comes to RevOps, how cool would it be for your service team to be able to see everything that's gone on with this particular contact? Or how cool would it be for your sales team to look at someone who's now a customer and see all the activity that's now happening with that customer? So when they follow up to ask for the referral, or they follow up to try to increase the contract size or lock in for another year, you have the history there. So getting contact engagement history and getting that unified is really, really critical, because it's hard to, excuse me, it's hard to enable your team to have relevant conversations when they don't have access to this data. Oh, by the way, people today expect nothing less than for you to know everything about them, right? What's one of the most unnerving things is when you call a customer service number and they ask you to enter the 16-digit account number, and then what's the first thing that the person asks when they come on the phone? What's your account number, right? We all know that's the most unnerving thing, and it's because we expect you to leverage the data you already have on me. And so this is what your buyers expect, and so this really empowers your people to have relevant conversations. We also need to standardize on the data across all these systems so everybody's speaking the same language, and the various values mean the same things across the various systems. And so the marketing, sales, and service teams have to agree upon and comply with standards for data around, one, the minimum contact record criteria. So for example, when marketing hands a contact off to sales, what's the minimum criteria in that contact record sales wants to see before they'll take it? When sales hands a customer over to service, what's the minimum contact record criteria that sales must hand over to the service team? This is really important because it's going to ensure that you have good continuity and that you're passing good data over from one area to the next. You also want to make sure that everyone agrees on life cycle stage criteria. So a moment ago when I said, when I talked about MQLs, well, what is an MQL? I mean, we all know the academic definition, but in your organization, what's the criteria for an MQL? What's the criteria for an opportunity? What's the criteria for customer? Marketing, sales, and service must have that documented, and they must agree upon it. And then everyone must ensure that their respective systems adhere to that criteria. So that way, when marketing hands an opportunity or an MQL to sales, it truly has to be an MQL as agreed upon by both departments. 3, you want to agree upon and create standards for the triggers and transfer of contact ownership. So when does a contact move from marketing to sales? When does the contact move from sales to service? When does service then get someone else involved to re-engage that particular client and transfer temporary ownership back to either marketing or sales? You have to agree upon those triggers and when those transfers happen. When does marketing no longer become the primary owner? When does sales become the primary owner of the contact? And then when does service become the primary owner of the contact? It's really critical that everyone understands it and we get it documented. Simple stuff, but it's important to get out. Finally, analytics. It's not just enough to look at Google Analytics and understand traffic and basic conversion data, but you need to be able to see across all of your experiences how all of your content assets come together to create new contacts and customers, how the various activities on social, how the various activities on your website, how the emails, you need to be able to see how all of that comes together in one spot, so that way you can understand the total picture and create that full funnel accountability. So again, Google Analytics is great. Everyone needs to have it. It's good for diving into and dissecting some of the tactical things. But if you want full funnel accountability, you need to make sure you align on some sort of analytics platform that can get all of this for you. I have some favorites. I don't want to make a sales pitch here today for some of my favorites, but they're out there. And so it's important that you get that aligned, so that way you can have that full picture. So that way when you meet as a team, you can have a conversation about the entire program, not just go off in your silos and discuss your, the various clicks and ticks. So analytics is another important layer to align on. And your goal is to understand the full entire journey with your buyers, your prospects, and your customers. Again, if you want to effectively drive referrals and upsells, you can't do that in Google Analytics. You can't see that. So you need a place to be able to see that. You need a place to be able to see which emails and which content are driving, the most engagement, which ones lead to customers ultimately. And so to put that all in one place to be able to see that is really critical and allows you to make better decisions. And then finally, with platform, one of the things that once you're aligned, one of the things you can do is now start to methodically deploy various enablement features. So just getting aligned is like the foundation. Now you can really enable your team to go a lot further. So here's my definition of enablement. They're technological features that allow you to increase efficiencies and personalize interactions across marketing, sales, and service at scale. That's the critical word here, is you can now do these things at scale. So now we have our foundation. Now we can start doing things at scale to start to drive more performance, to start to drive more engagement. Here's just a real high-level overview of some of the enablement technologies across marketing, sales, and service. You'll notice I identify CRM really as kind of the core, the foundation. This is kind of the bedrock of your marketing and sales and service tech. And so you need CRM at the core. So that way you can have basic things like contact data, lifecycle management, mapping the engagement history, and so on. And then the various enablement features that you may or may not find useful within your organization are listed here. So for marketing, things like content publishing, to be able to publish your blog, your website, your emails, and so on. Lead capture, campaigns, so you can start to organize your efforts, SEO, and so on. I'm not going to read through all of these, but these are the various enablement features by area that you can now look to then say, okay, now that we have the foundation, now that we're aligned, now that we have the insights that we're after, now how can we step on the gas and make ourselves more effective with what we're doing? And so if you find that you have a bottleneck in sales, maybe you don't have enough salespeople, and there's just too many opportunities to follow up on, which is a great problem, by the way, maybe you can look towards some sales enablement features to start to make your sales team more efficient. Maybe marketing, for example, just isn't driving enough leads. Maybe they're not driving enough new contacts in the database. And so maybe with a limited team, what can you do there to start to make them more effective and more powerful, and so on. Finally, let's talk about people. So there are 4 core areas of your RevOps team when we talk about people, and those fall into strategy, content, engagement, and platform. So at a high level, your strategy team aims to drive the overarching direction of the program, analyze the data, and identify bottlenecks. That's what they're there to primarily do. In the next slide, we're going to talk about the various kinds of roles that could go into each of these areas. Content. Their job is to develop and optimize content and offers that address the bottlenecks that have been identified by the strategy team. Engagement, their job is to mobilize the content and offers so that they're in front of the right audiences at the right time. And then finally, platform team, Their job is to set up, maintain, and grow the technology to enable the activities and insights that the team needs. So these are the 4 core areas of a RevOps team. And let's take a look at what that might look like. And so these are the various roles that you might identify. Now you might say, holy cow, Frank, I can't, dedicate, 15, 16, 17 people to RevOps. And you're exactly right. The idea of creating a RevOps team isn't always about hiring more people. It's about bringing the existing people you have together in a way that aligns them on the goal of driving growth for your organization. That's why we call it a growth team, right? Or your RevOps team. And so by bringing them together, all aligned around the same mission, you're going to be more effective in driving revenue and hitting your goals and objectives. So for example, under strategy, what I highly recommend is your strategy team should consist of someone who's in charge of driving the RevOps program. This person's going to oversee the implementation of RevOps into the business. They really lead overarching strategy. They do the analysis, coaching, and support to the rest of the team. But what's really critical is the other members that need to be on the strategy team. And by the way, this is not negotiable. This is not a nice to have. On your strategy team, you need to have your executive team present. At least whoever the GM is, whoever the COO is, you need your head of marketing, your head of sales, and your head of service. It's critical that these people are involved in the process so that way they can provide the critical data and the critical insights to contribute towards the direction that the RevOps director is going to be driving the program. And when the RevOps director says, hey, I'm noticing a bottleneck here, we need to make sure the right people are in the room to answer the questions as to why there's a bottleneck, why are there gaps, what's going on, and what are our opportunities. So this is the strategy team. It's really critical if you want to drive RevOps that you have this kind of buy-in. This isn't just a marketing function, by the way. There's a lot of marketing in RevOps. There's a lot of marketing talk and a lot of marketing activities. But generally speaking, we're driving marketing across the entire organization, and we're getting the entire organization across marketing, sales, and service involved in this idea of marketing with a whole goal of driving revenue. So again, having each of these people present in your strategy team, really, really critical. This is not just a marketing effort. Next, you're going to have a content team. And so your content team is going to consist of, roles like a strategist, someone who figures out how to address the gaps and opportunities as identified by the director. They're going to then figure out, okay, what are the specific kinds of content we need, and what are the specific kind of offers that we need? What's the execution plan? What's the calendar? How am I going to guide the producers? Where do we have gaps and opportunities just within content and offers? And then they work with producers and designers to get the content produced and then get it polished and ready for publication to the world or distribution to the world. This also means, though, on your content team, you need your subject matter experts involved. I can't tell you how many times I've come across people who develop content plans and they don't require that the subject matter experts are part of the team. They sit there and often beg and hope to get on this person's calendar and are often ignored. So this is going to require that the strategy team sets the expectation with the various stakeholders within the organization that you're going to participate in this process. It's important, and here's why. Here's what it means to you. Here's what it's going to do for the organization. So your subject matter experts absolutely have to be involved in the process. They need to be able to provide the expertise. They need to be able to fact check things. They need to be able to sit down for interviews so that way the actual, factual content, the relevant content comes out, especially if you have a technical product. You can't rely on people who, are just merely skilled in content to be able to write factually and accurately and in a way that differentiates your brand on the expertise like your subject matter experts. Really critical that they're involved and that they're seen as part of the team. Then you have an engagement team. This team is all about driving they're all about mobilizing all the content and offers that are created by your content team. And this is really important because if you develop the content and it just sits there, then nobody's going to see it. And so these people will be doing things like promoting it on LinkedIn and Facebook and the socials. They'll be doing things like driving Google ads. They might be engaging people directly on LinkedIn to proactively put that content out there, which is different than advertising. They might be emailing the database to let the database know about the new content and offers. So it's really important that once you have the content and offers there, that now you have an engagement team to drive engagement with those content and offers. And then finally, you need people on your platform team to operate the specialized software, to build out the workflows and the automation, which are critical parts of doing RevOps, right? To operationalize revenue, you need the software to do the automations and whatnot, and build out the pipelines and the dashboards and so on. That's what your software specialists will do. And then finally, a web developer who will ensure that integrations exist between the core systems, do any sort of custom programming, web server upkeep, and whatnot. So here's kind of a snapshot of what your RevOps team might look like. Okay, next slide here, jumping on. So how do we take action? Let's look at 3 ways you can lead the charge and create a culture of revenue within your organization, ultimately so we can help you crush the competition. First thing I recommend you do is, excuse me, conduct an audit. I want you to ask questions like, what are our goals? What are our objectives? Do our marketing, sales, and service teams know those goals and objectives? Where are we strong? Where are we weak? What are we producing now in terms of content offers? What kind of retention do we have now? What kind of referrals do we get now? What's our average contract value? How good are we at increasing contract value? These are the questions you want to ask. You want to find out what's happening right now. And so I'd highly recommend you get together with someone from marketing, someone from sales, someone from service, start asking these questions. Start understanding, where are you at right now? Do you operate well as a team? Does sales know what marketing does? Does service know what marketing does? Does marketing know what service does? Like, ask those questions, have those conversations, and get a handle on what's going on in your organization, and identify where you have gaps and opportunities, and also identify where you have resources on the team and people who have passion and time to be able to jump into this effort. Second thing I want you to do, you should assign a RevOps champion within your organization. This is somebody that will lead the charge on the strategy, the analysis, helping identify and prioritize buyer personas, helping document and architect the experience that you're going to create for those buyer personas, and making sure everyone on the team is in full alignment, is aware of that strategy, is aware of what the results are, the gaps, the opportunities, the bottlenecks, and so on. So assign a RevOps champion. It's shameless self-plug. If you just don't have anyone on the team that is capable of this, has the passion for it, or just simply doesn't have the time, my firm can help you with a RevOps champion, someone who can be the director and lead that and help your team align in a RevOps fashion. Again, this isn't meant to be a sales pitch for my organization, but if you don't have that, please get in touch with me. I'll share my email address here at the end. Third thing I want you to do is I want you to meet monthly. So get that RevOps team together every month and talk about what's working, what's not working. What are the success stories you're hearing from each area of the organization? Who's producing content? What are the new topics? Where do you have gaps and opportunities in your content and offer experiences? And get together and talk about those things and get everyone excited and enthused about this idea of driving revenue, right? I mean, it sounds silly to say, but the more people that are focused on revenue, the better, right? I mean, that's kind of a silly question. That's an emphatic yes. I know in my organization, the more people I have thinking about revenue, the more it excites me and the more we grow. So get the team together to meet as a revenue operations team monthly and get everyone excited about meeting the revenue targets and the objectives, and help them understand how they contribute to that growth. And so this way you don't ever have anyone, additionally, you don't ever have anyone who doesn't understand, if you're in service, what marketing is doing, and vice versa. Like, that should never be the case. And so by coming together regularly, the teams will know what they're doing, and making sure that those experiences are going to be in alignment and those things are going to be congruent.
When you do this, by the way, these are the kinds of transformations that we see. We see people go from being, stuck in the weeds to really being able to focus on big picture, not knowing where their next leads are going to come from, for, really having a consistent process for acquisition and delight, disjointed reporting or little to no reporting with little to no insights, to really having a unified full funnel report, that allows you to have the insights and accountability. We see organizations before have siloed marketing, sales, and service departments to now having one unified powerhouse growth team. We see people who are unsure of what levers to pull in the business to having complete clarity about their strategy and tactics that they need to execute to drive growth. And finally, people with poor customer experiences across the entire journey that create really clunky handoffs. And we see the transformation to that of really having seamless, one-of-a-kind experiences that can really help turn your customers into raving fans. So this is the kind of transformation that we see when organizations take a RevOps approach and stop thinking about it as, independent activities within their organization. So to help you map all of this out, you've seen the buyer persona that I put up on the screen. You saw the content and offer, relationship-driven experience that we, identified. Those are all part of a template that we call the Digital Utopia Blueprint. It's a tool for identifying all of your buyer persona focused campaigns, content, offers, and engagement activities in one easy to understand view. And you can have access to this for free. It's the very tool we use to define, revenue operations programs for our clients, and we make it accessible to you. So I'd love to offer you that for free. You can document your buyer persona, you can document your experience and your engagement activities. And you can also learn more about the underlying methodology to the blueprint called the Digital Utopia methodology at the website buildingyourdigitalutopia.com. You can learn more about the book I wrote called Building Your Digital Utopia. We have a podcast there that you can listen to. Lots of good stuff. So I highly recommend go check it out. There's some tools, assets, and information to help you start taking action today on this idea of RevOps. Buildingyourdigitalutopia.com. And then finally, if you'd like to get some help figuring out your RevOps strategy, get in touch with me. We'd love to offer you a free RevOps strategy session. I have a member of my team that I can set aside, one of my top strategists who can work with you and really help you figure out if RevOps is right for your organization. How far away are you from making something like that a reality? Do you have the people and the resources that you could bring together to make this a reality? They will help you answer those questions and help you understand, based on what you're doing now, could you shift budget, time, and resources to make this happen and have a much better output? They'll help you map all of that out and help you figure that out in a strategy session. And there'll be no pressure, no obligation, by the way. Look, if you'd love to work with our firm, absolutely, we would entertain that. But on this initial strategy session, no sales pitch, just pure value. If you like what you hear, it's up to you to say, hey, let's talk further. But we want to help you figure out if RevOps is something that you can get going within your organization. Just shoot me an email. I don't have a landing page or a funnel to send you or anything like that. Just shoot me an email and say, Frank, I'm ready to do this. I'd love that strategy session. And you can reach me, frank@digitopia.agency, frank@digitopia.agency. Folks, this has been real fun. Apologize about the glitch. Hopefully this second add-on video helps you complete the webinar that you just attended today. Again, if there are any other questions that you have that we weren't able to answer today, shoot me an email, frank@digitopia.agency. It was awesome being with you guys today. Have a great day.